Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So we just had Dimension Force officially come out over the past weekend, and it has proven to be one heck of a set. I know that a lot of prices for cards from the set were actually quite low when pre-sales first started going up on TCG Player, and that kind of turned people away from the set. However, with the help of the May 2022 ban list, the cards from Dimension Force are actually appearing quite impactful. We had some events over the past weekend that showcased just what some of the cards can do when combined with other strategies, so today we are going to highlight some of the early price bumps that we've seen as a result of Dimension Force's release. Let's get started. So to kick things off, we are of course going to talk about the Therion cards, Therions being the big new archetype to come out in Dimension Force. The monsters are all really cool. They kind of remind me of like dragon rulers actually. They all have effects where you can summon them out and equip either a Therion monster or a monster with the same type from your graveyard to the Therion you're summoning out. And then they have effects either as monsters or they can give effects to the monster that they are equipped to. Really versatile engine that has already proven to be quite strong here in the TCG, especially given how we just saw hits to other decks with the banning of Verte Anaconda, Meow Meow Mew, and Auroradon. Therions aren't seeing play in absolutely everything, but they're definitely competitive as we've seen success over the weekend from decks like ABC Therion, P.U.N.K Therion, and Sanavalon Therion, and because of this we've seen a bunch of the Therion cards jump up in price when it did look like they were beginning to trend downwards. This is strange, especially so early on in the card's release, but it does happen when people pre-selling cards underestimate the card's impact on the game. For instance, when Access Code Talker was first up for pre-sale, they were down at $30 before obviously eventually running up to the $150 mark. So Regulus is the main piece here, being one of the secret rares. It was down between 40 and 50. We're now seeing it atop the set at $85. Lily is one that wasn't looking too hot. It was down at like $15, but with the Sanavalon Therion deck seeing a top over the weekend and some decks playing a bigger Therion package, people are finding Lily more necessary, and it's now up to $35. And then of course we have the field spell Disc Coliseum also bouncing back up. It was down at like $5 to $6, but it is now up to $20. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on if you own the cards already, these cards are looking like they are going to stick around in the format. So if you're wanting to play any of these cards in your deck, you're probably just going to have to pay up for them in order to do so. Next up, we're taking a look at Libromancer Fire. So Libromancers, after the first wave of support in Battle of Chaos, were honestly not that great. They didn't have enough pieces, and the pieces that they did have access to seemed kind of underwhelming. Now, however, they got several new support cards in Dimension Force, and we can kind of start to see where the deck is going. Between Fire and Geek Boy, they have multiple ways to get free bodies onto the field, which is really cool. And when you combine the deck with some other generic engines that we have in the game, like the Therions or P.U.N.Ks or any of the various synchro packages, the deck can actually do some pretty cool things. Libromancer is of course the key piece here. It is a free special summon if you reveal a ritual monster from your hand, and it also searches for another Libromancer monster on summon, which is really free. Now the deck isn't top tier or anything like that, but it's definitely a deck that has potential. Think of things like Subterrors or Spirals. All it took was that one crazy OCG support card for each of those archetypes to take off, and that could potentially happen with the Libromancer deck here as well. Libromancer Fire was down at $5 a piece, looking like a complete bust of a secret rare, but it is now back up to $10, which is better, I guess. Honestly, given the potential that the archetype has shown with just these two waves of support, I would consider picking up and holding on to a set of all the Libromancer support cards, just in case we see some cool support from an upcoming OCG set. One other card from Dimension Force that we're going to take a look at here is No P.U.N.K Dear Note, one of the new P.U.N.K cards. So the P.U.N.K archetype is one that has a crazy amount of potential. With Emergency Teleport at 3 and a lot of cards that can search for other pieces, the deck does seem really consistent. P.U.N.K Therion was a pretty popular deck over in the OCG. While it wasn't top tier, being overshadowed by things like Despia, Adventurer, Tenyi, and the Fluwanderees, it was still pretty cool. Now that we have last format's decks hit by the most recent ban list, maybe P.U.N.K Therion will do better here in the TCG format. It is still early. I think there's one P.U.N.K Therion list that I saw from a regionals in Pasadena that looked kind of interesting. Anyways, P.U.N.Ks are especially noteworthy because they're actually getting a new synchro and field spell in the next set, Power of the Elements. They're actually really good and will be a big boost for the archetype. There's definitely a strong chance that we could see all of the P.U.N.K cards jump as a result when the set is officially released. Now, Dear Note was pretty cheap. It was only $3 to $4 early on. It is now already back up to the $10 mark, I think one of the things that people forget about with ultra rares, especially in core sets now, is that they're not automatically just these cheaper write-offs. In the past, we used to get only 2 ultras per box and 1 secret per box, and when the ultras went from 2 to 4 per box, a lot of people just kind of wrote them off and thought these cards aren't going to be worth as much anymore. However, as we've seen with cards like Borreload Savage Dragon and IP Masquerena, they still can be worth money. A lot of the bad ultras are going to be worth less than $1, right? But even with something like Sword Soul Emergence, that's a relatively cheap ultra given how strong and impactful the archetype is. But overall, I think that with the new P.U.N.K support we have coming in Power of the Elements, I would wait a tiny bit to see if Deer Note calms down in price back to around $5 to $7. Then I would grab a few extra copies because I think this card is definitely going to shoot back up in price when the new support from Power of the Elements comes out. Alright, so we're going to take a look at a few other cards that have jumped in price because of Dimension Force, starting off with Naturia Rose Whip. So Rose Whip is a card that has been talked about ever since Halki-Fibrax was first released, and people have been looking for ways to play it ever since. However, Rose Whip has never really been that great of a choice. It's pretty vulnerable and difficult to protect or keep on the field. However, with the Therion deck coming out, this card is actually pretty interesting. The field spell, Therion Discoliseum, allows you to protect one of your monsters once per turn from being destroyed by battle by sending a Therion card from your deck to the graveyard, which means that it's much easier to keep Rose Whip on the board now. And of course, limiting your opponent to only 1 spell or trap card per turn is probably going to make the game very difficult for them. I don't know just how viable this card is, but I did see one deck list run this card in the side deck over the weekend, and I know that other YouTubers such as Yassine and Slim have talked about this card as well, so test it for yourselves and see if it's worth running. Now the card has a couple of different printings, but it is the blinged out copies that are obviously pricier. Interestingly, the original dual terminal printing and the DT foiled printing from Hidden Arsenal Chapter 1 are each going to cost you about $20, each of those obviously being quite difficult to find. The super rares from Hidden Arsenal 2, they are much older as well, those are around $8 a copy. Fortunately, we do still have the commons as well from Hidden Arsenal Chapter 1 at only $1 or so a piece. If you guys don't own a copy of Rose Whip already, I would definitely buy a copy for $1 just to have it available for yourselves to use, just in case it becomes really strong. But yeah, still a bit early for us to see just how strong or good this card is going to be in the upcoming format, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks worth of results. Next up, let's quickly take a look at A Assault Core, B Buster Drake, and C Crush Wyvern. So early on into Dimension Force's release, ABC Therion is looking like a top tier contender. Tom showed off the deck I believe last week, and the deck can make some absolutely crazy end boards. I personally have never really been that big on the deck, but it does look really scary to have to play against. Anyways, we are starting to see all of the different pieces trend upwards in price. Each of them has 2 printings, the original super rare from the starter deck, and then each of them got a secret rare reprint from Legendary Collection Kaiba. I believe the supers are obviously cheaper, each of those going to be around $2 to $3. However, with the secrets, A and C are going to be about $4 to $5, and then B is the one that's a little bit more expensive, around $7 a piece. I believe that it's because of back when Union Carrier was in the game, people would equip Buster Drake with Union Carrier to a monster to make it immune to Dark Ruler no more. Even with Union Carrier now banned, maybe all of the Bs got separated so they are a bit more annoying to find. Now in current ABC decks, you do only need to run 2 copies of each letter, though you do need 3 of the ABC Dragon Buster. Unfortunately for me, I kind of feel like I need to keep a set of each. It just looks nicer in a binder and I want all of them to match. However, if you are okay with piecing out 1 of each, then you can just keep 2 of each letter, or if you're picking them up loose off of different people, you only need to pick up 2 copies of each one, which is fine. But yeah, ABC Therion, definitely a scary deck to watch out for this format, as they will definitely be a top tier contender moving forward. Okay, so this one I don't want to spend too much time on, I just want to kind of like acknowledge them, right? They are the Water Enchantress of the Temple and Rite of Aramasir. So a lot of people were speculating that the Adventurer token engine could have been hit on the most recent ban list. I didn't really think so, I thought the engine was just too new, though I could see it going either way. They ended up leaving the engine untouched, though it's unclear what deck is really going to abuse this package. With the Red Rose Dragon being limited to 1, that's somewhat of a hit to the Adventurer Tenyi deck, and most of the Despia lists seem to have switched over to playing the pure build. We didn't really see too much price movement with either of these 2 cards. Rite has stayed pretty steady at $45, Enchantress did go up to $55, it was between $45 and $50 before the ban list. I think that the reason for no movement here is because it doesn't really seem like there's any deck that's going to abuse the package super consistently and be very strong, at least not right now. Sure, we have the ABC Therions that can use it, but I think not all builds even use the Adventurer token stuff. Aside from that, right, like it's maybe Sanavalon Therion, but decks like Fluwandereeze, Swordsoul, Despia, P.U.N.K Therion, all of these big decks don't use this package, so the prices remain down. This is a tricky situation because if the deck doesn't see play, it's not going to get hit, but then it will also stay down in price. If the deck does see more play, it'll go up in price, but then it's more likely to be hit. I think that if you've been wanting to pick up the Adventurer token package anyways, now is probably a fine time to do so while it isn't seeing too much play. Remember how strong the engine was in the OCG and how they had to limit both the Water Enchantress and Right? I think it's only a matter of time before we see the package used in some sort of top tier contending strategy here in the TCG, and when that time does come, expect the prices of both of these cards to start trending back upwards. Alright, the last card we're going to take a look at here is Pendulum Call. So Pendulum's got a pretty big boost in Dimension Force in the form of Beyond the Pendulum, a Link 2 monster that searches for any Pendulum card in the game, which is pretty cool. On the most recent ban list, we did also see Performapal Monkey Board go from banned to limited status, which is pretty cool as well, especially with 3 copies of Skullcrabat Joker in the game. Now, to be fair, I don't think Pendulums are a top tier deck quite yet. The deck still has some very notable flaws, especially compared to other top decks in the current format. However, the deck looks really cool and is definitely stronger than it was last format. One key card for the deck is Pendulum Call, a normal spell card that lets you discard a card to search for 2 Pendulum Magician monsters from your deck to your hand, but it also prevents your scales from being destroyed by card effects. This is cool because it effectively searches you a complete set of scales to set up a Pendulum summon, or if you already have your scales set up, it can search you for 2 pieces to special summon out onto the field and make plays with. Now, I say that Pendulums aren't meta, but they are still a scary deck you have to watch out for. Don't underestimate them because they can still make some crazy boards. They can Scythe Lock you as well if you aren't prepared. Pendulum Call is a 3-of in the deck, and it's a pretty expensive card now. Either the super rare or common version of the card is going to cost you like $20 a piece, the common coming from a structure deck, and the super rare coming from a side set, Pendulum Evolution, which was honestly a really forgettable set that not too many people cared about and opened. This card did used to be down at anywhere from $5 to $10, so if you guys might have this card lying around in your bulk somewhere, it's now worth a decent chunk of money and might be worth digging up and offloading, especially now while there's all of this hype because of the release of Beyond the Pendulum. Okay guys, that is it for today's episode. I do have a ton of other things I want to talk about. I'm going to have to upload again on Friday just to go over a bunch of other stuff. Honestly, the ban list and Dimension Force coming out at kind of like the same time has made things so interesting. There's so many price shifts all over the market. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by slamming that thumbs up button for me. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about Dimension Force, about the cards we talked about today, and what other cards are trending on the market so I can potentially cover them in a future Market Watch episode as well. Also, if you haven't already, do make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel, guys. And until next time, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.